Welcome to this edition of Master Talks, part of our executive program in fashion sustainability. Our guest this week is Cyrill Gutsch, founder and leader of Parley for the Oceans, the group that's literally taking plastic out of the ocean, recycling it and putting it on your feet. My guest today is Cyrill Gutsch from Parley for the Oceans. Welcome, Cyrill.
Hey, Simon.
So here we are. It's the end of the summer, 2019. We're at your office in Lafayette Street, downtown Manhattan. You're not from around here. So what's the backstory? Where did you come from and how do you end up here?
So I moved to New York in 2004. And I moved here to start a design firm. And this design firm was specialized on brand strategy, brand identity, but had a very, very strong focus on collaboration. Like, how can you bring all these different experts together to improve a company, to kind of bring them to the next level, which is often innovation, but often also about big ideas and changing the culture of an organization.
Do you know, I hate to interrupt, but I'm going to all the time. I love that because we talk at WeDesign, we talk a lot about the rules for design thinking, and that's two of them right there. You know, you've got to build a consensus and you've got to think about design in everything that you do. Sorry.
Yes, and it's sometimes weird for people that a designer would like suddenly speak about business, suddenly speak about business models, about product. But I feel that good design includes it all. And today, nothing works if it's not holistic, if it's not comprehensive, and if you are leaving important aspects out. Because everybody now feels if something is real, is true or not. And you only achieve that if you are understanding design as the overarching discipline that puts it all together.
It's the design of the storytelling.
Yes, exactly.
So,
it's part of it.
So you came from Europe, from Germany?
Yes.
Germany,
yeah.
In 2004 to be a designer, set up a design studio. But now you have Parley for the Oceans. So what happened?
So by 2012, 8 years in, I realized, and it was interesting, I realized that I don't want to work anymore for clients in a typical way. Like, you create a brand, you launch it, and then they often screw it up. And then they come back later and they want you to heal it again. And it didn't feel right. And I thought, like, what would be the one thing that I like the most? What I really can contribute the best? And it was collaboration, bringing together people. And not only creating yourself, but collaborating with others.
Yeah.
In that moment, I met a guy, Captain Paul Watson, the founder of Greenpeace and Sea Shepherd.
Right.
And we talked. He was in a tough spot. He was arrested by the German authorities and he needed somebody to kind of campaign him out of this.
Okay.
On the other hand, what I learned in that meeting was like the oceans will die if you're not making a big move. And they're going to be pretty much our legacy. Dead Sea will what we leave behind.
Yeah.
And that was something I couldn't accept.
It's interesting because if you're watching this, it's your fault.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
Also
you couldn't
mine.
accept, so you're a designer,
Yeah.
you'll have some degree of impact, you're good at building consensus, and you realize the oceans are dying.
And you're responsible.
Yeah, and your response is your fault.
Yeah, mine.
So what did
and
you
that
do?
was the approach. I didn't say like, oh my God, we have to go protesting and shaming everybody and the bad corporations. It's not true. Like, it's in the hands of the creative community, really. And I feel like we have to own that movement because we're creating these ideas, we're creating these materials with all the scientists within our class, and we're pushing and promoting things.
Yeah.
So that means, more or less, that it's in our hand to create new materials, to create new products, and to create new business, because every business is based on an idea.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember a little while ago someone said to me, would we really be better off if all of our fashion landfill was really well designed organic cotton goods? Not really, because it's still landfill. We still don't need it. Okay, so this was the genesis for Parley for the Oceans, right? So how did you bring it about?
So the idea was to say, there are so many activists out there, there's so many interest groups, and there is such a big frontier between the environmentalists, the scientists, and people in charge, people in lead, that actually making all these things, using all these materials, and also believing in exploitative business practices. And we felt that Parley could be that mutual ground, that peacemaker that brings people together for a moment, creates an idea, a vision, so everybody kind of goes their way, but still understands there is a reason why we should head towards the same direction.
Yeah.
And that direction would be to leave the toxic age that we created. Because when you're looking at it, these materials, and plastic is just a symbol of that, these are design failures. We're using the wrong ingredients to maintain our lifestyle. We're eating up our planet and we're tossing too much toxic waste out of there.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it, because people seem to always want to slightly tinker, slightly fix a little bit. Make it a bit more profitable, don't lose any money, and make it a bit better. But actually, if you said to all the smart people that created these incredible businesses, if you could start from scratch now, what do you want to do? I suspect most of them would not say, I want to create loads of waste. Most of them would say, I'd like to create something, make loads of money, and have it all green. So your response is, let's bring people together to find ways to actually achieve that, rather than just putting a bit of greenwashing coating on it.
This is what changed in the last 7 years since we started Parley. Back then there was the idea of, I give back. First I fuck up everything, and then I give back.
Yeah.
That's wrong. Don't take it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That means exactly what you're saying, build your business in the right way. Collaboration, eco-innovation, and creativity. You don't want to cater to old technologies. You want to actually invent and push new technologies that are not destroying our planet.
Yeah.
And that's the big opportunity right now, and I compare it with the digital revolution back then. I would say we are now in a material revolution. And the audiences and also the staff, the talent, doesn't accept it anymore to work and to provide and to support a company that is just taking and destroying. We want to see purpose. And that is a new era, really. And
of course, the big difference now is we all know everything. We all have a phone.
We have access to knowledge.
Yeah, everywhere in the world.
Seconds, and not only the experts, but also an everyday person, a student, a kid. I see 5-year-old boys or girls researching and knowing more about the chemical consistency of the products they're consuming.
So I want to come back to that and how you collaborate with people that can actually get the message across, because you're very good at that. But before we get there, just quickly tell me, what does Parley do?
Parley is a collaboration space. And there are the creative community is the core, then there are brands, there are governments, there are intergovernment organizations, there are ultra high net worth individuals, and there are other environmentalists. And our idea is to run projects, create projects, show that there are ways to make money, to be lucrative, but in a new form.
So give me an example of a couple of the ways that you do that.
Yeah, Adidas is a good example and was our founding partner really. And the idea was to make Adidas, who was at the time back then one of the biggest polluters, turn them into the biggest change maker. Use them to bring change to a full category, fashion and sports, and show that big businesses do care, and show how it's good for their business. And when you're looking at Adidas today, they're putting 17 million products out this year with the Parley logo on it, and they're grossing nearly $2 billion.
$2 billion. Yeah. So think about that. $2 billion with the Parley logo on, which is about collaboration and change for good. And Adidas is a public company. It's not privately owned by one person. They had to convince their shareholders, they had to convince their bankers, they had to convince everybody that this was going to be profitable for the company.
I would say it's actually now the case that these shareholders are investing into these kind of brands because they believe that's the future. We're training a lot of them. We're training a lot of ultra high net worth individuals who invest into companies like an Adidas. And they are seeing the shift. They're seeing it in their own households. Their kids are suddenly buying differently. The kids actually don't agree anymore in the investment structures of their parents. Mm-hmm. They say that only 4% of the investments are acceptable for their kids. That means there will be a huge shift. And that will not only come from a consumer, but also from the people who are actually putting money into organizations. So economy is really up for redesign.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're all familiar with what Larry Fink at BlackRock said when he spoke to all of his community and said, if you don't invest in companies that are addressing climate change, I will unseat you. So do you think that's because it's kind of cool to look like that right now? Or is that a genuine change in the way that culture is going? And culture, I mean, consumer behavior that's not so, I mean, listen, I don't think 5 years ago any of us would have predicted the current state of politics in the US. I didn't think it would go as bad as this. So things change in a big way. Do you feel like this is a groundswell that's heading in one direction, or is there the chance that it's just a little bit of current trend?
I think it's a super trend. It's a trend that will not go away. It's a trend that started very niche, that then came into like more acceptable social layers of society. Mm-hmm. And now it is this one thing that is more prestigious than having a big yacht and accumulating money. Mm-hmm. Because it's based on something very basic that lives in us, and that's this instinct of survival.
Right.
We are masters in surviving. And I think there is this global feeling in us, in everyone, that there is something wrong the way we live on this planet. There's something broken. And it either leads into fear or it goes towards this urge to innovate. And I think what he's saying, what he's referring to is, this is the future. And everybody who doesn't see that, who doesn't get that, has no right to be on the table anymore.
You know, I love these conversations because I make a very strong argument with people, certainly in fashion, that if you're not planning to be sustainable in 5 years, you won't have a business in 5 years. Not because you can't make clothes, but because nobody's going to want your clothes.
And it needs time to prepare for that. I would compare it again with digital. All the companies that back then missed the train, didn't convert to digital early enough, they lost.
Yeah.
And that's the same here. Every company, every leader who is like missing that train has a disadvantage. You want to be ahead. You want to be at the front of that movement. You don't want to be a follower. And that is for me true leadership. If you see where something is ultimately heading and you're standing up and you're moving your ship towards that, that is leadership today.
I mean, it's really about survival. I mean, I don't just mean survival for the human race on this planet, but I think corporate survival. You know, if you don't have a plan to become sustainable and become responsible, then you should be planning a different career, because that's what's going to happen.
100%. Your own people will not respect you, your clients won't buy your products, and the investors will not see a future of you.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we know where we think we're going, where we want to go as well. Who's doing a good job and who isn't? Now, how do you feel about the fashion business? You know, because this is going out to the fashion world globally. Who are we inspired by, and who do we think really needs to have a hard conversation with themselves?
I think some people are trying, and that's great. Some people are putting the flag up, which is amazing. Other people are trying and doing and performing in the silent. I think at this moment in time, it's really about making a jump and not having excuses anymore.
Yeah.
And there is always a reason for not trying. Like, oh my God, I have fur in my collection. Then hey, take it out. Or don't use it as an excuse. And just like start and don't say, oh my God, I can't change it all. That's why I'm not even trying. At this point in time, it's about intention. And you want to see that a brand is really moving. You want to see that they're doing everything they can. Otherwise, you're just losing respect for them.
Yeah.
And a brand today has to be a guarantee to a consumer that they're making the right decisions, not only for style, not only for like a code, but also for their own future. And that is something that suddenly, when you're really honest as a CEO, puts everything into relation.
I mean, that's where it becomes very difficult to hide from. You know, because I mean, it seems to me that with leadership favoring this kind of approach, that's great. But if leadership and the consumers are favoring this kind of approach, there's very little argument in not doing it. You know, and I have to say that when I look at companies now making huge missteps, you know, away from sustainability, like Forever 21 and that wonderful label they had, which was, if you've worn this once and Instagrammed it, chuck it away, or something along those lines. It was bizarre, because that's so contrary to where the world is going.
Yes and no, because it's pretty much the old idea of growth is you're selling a lot of items, people are buying more and more and more, and again and again. And I will say the dream of every brand is that these items kind of disappear very quickly so you can sell more.
Yeah.
And therefore the whole idea of this product, the whole relationship to the consumer is under suspicion right now. I think there is a certain limit to growth when it comes to quantities. And we have to find models where we actually show companies there is a win in having strong relationships with their consumers and having an exchange and making money on that way.
Yeah.
And not only by selling off items. I think that's so old school.
That's a really interesting point, because you look at the companies that are making the biggest steps in sustainability and you think, you still want us to buy more of what you do. You know, and you could make the argument, yeah, but if everyone bought everything from this one company that's really sustainable, would we be in a better place? We'd be in a better place, but it wouldn't be we wouldn't solve the problem. You know, we'd still be making too much stuff and buying too much.
Yeah, because we are running on this old idea. Growth means quantity, but I feel success and increasing the value of your brand means relationship these days.
Yeah.
The more I know, the deeper my relationship is to my audience, the more there is an exchange, the more I can pretty much like add to that, the better my business will be, the higher value my company will have. And honestly, data today, and it's not a nice thing to say, but data is the most valuable asset. Why wouldn't it be the relationship? I know something about you, I'm catering to you in a specific moment, and this moment of giving you and providing something to you in the second you need it, that could be the new luxury.
Yeah.
That could be the new product. This is far away from material.
Yeah, I'm interested in the Real as one example of a new way of doing business. You know, and lest we, I mean, so the Real, for those that don't know, sells second-hand designer goods, basically. But they do it at a very high level, and you can get whatever you want. It's all authenticated, it's all beautifully presented, etc. It's, you know, it's not a green organization necessarily, but at least it's a new way of doing things.
And it's not only about, oh, this is a second-hand product. No, suddenly you have this entity that has an archive where you can actually have access to items that are not longer in the market. Because how often is it that you are falling in love with a jacket, or you missed to buy it, or you never had the opportunity, and suddenly you have the opportunity to do it again?
Yeah.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
So it doesn't per se mean that every new season, every new evolution of an item is better than the old one. You probably want to have access to everything.
Yeah.
You probably actually in the future want to show, and probably right now already want to show, that you're a true connoisseur of a brand, and you dig up all these like icons that had been released over the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, it's funny, I just saw one of the fashion editors just posted a new bag that she'd been given in Paris from Vuitton, and it was a stitch-for-stitch reissue of a 1928 bag. And you're like, oh, it's beautiful. But then you think, why, you know, maybe they should have dug out the old ones. And I don't know, they just seem something like, do we have to make a new version of the old one? Surely getting the old one and giving that out would have been a bit more.
Yeah, and I think there is, you know, if I know the needs of my consumers and I can communicate with them and I can allow them a better life and I can inspire them to do things they would otherwise not do, that has value.
Well, that's one of the critical things, isn't it? What are you giving your consumers? You're not giving them a new thing. You want to give them joy and pleasure and make them feel special and give them all the things they spend their money on, but that doesn't necessarily have to include a thing.
Exactly.
I mean, it's inspiring that millennials are into experiences now and the whole sharing economy, etc.
And authenticity. It's more about like knowing that something is real, knowing something is true.
Yeah.
There is a person that addresses me. There is a group of people that actually has a specific character that allows me to kind of learn from it and stand up for something.
Yeah. So Cyrill, I want to come back to the actual work that Parley's doing, because I know that much of what you do is concerned with taking plastic out of the ocean and repurposing it. And that's how Adidas is making so much money using repurposed plastic. Just this week, you announced a deal with Amex. So tell us about that.
So first of all, our objective was to make environmentalism sexy. And then also to kind of show that it is better money to protect the oceans than to destroy them. And last not least, we had the idea that purpose could be the next luxury.
Nice.
That materials that are sourced in a certain way, that products that are made in a certain way.
It just made me think of when people get super rich, they don't necessarily just buy more yachts and more cars. They adopt a purpose. So they actually get pleasure out of doing that. So I guess the end result of having all the money in the world is to try and do something good. We just need to pick up on that.
Exactly.
Sorry.
No, that's what it is.
But we can all do that at every level.
On our levels, that's the point. And what does that mean? Purpose is the new luxury. It means that I do actually get a kick out of how my product is being made, what the heritage of an item is, who made it, who's behind it, what do I support with it? Is it a direction? Is it an idea? Is it a vision? And that's, I think, what is the true power of what we contributed.
Tell me specifically, I know that Parley's concerned with collecting trash out of the ocean and repurposing it. So why and how does that happen?
When you're looking at all the environmental issues we're facing today, right, there is always a material, there's always a technology that causes it. And when we started Parley, we felt like, let's address one. And back then, plastic wasn't really known. And we felt like if we create a super trend around plastic, we can use that movement, we can use that traction to look towards other big issues. And the first step for us was to create a brand. And we called this material that nobody wants, that was labeled as marine litter or marine debris, we called it ocean plastic. We trademarked it even. And we said, this material now has more value in our own eyes than virgin plastic because somebody picked it up from a beach. Somebody went out there to remote places, through all this effort.
And you organize that.
Yes.
You organize people to go around the world and
Yeah.
pick up plastic from the beach.
28 countries are right now in our network, and there are over 140,000 volunteers.
That's amazing. 28
Yeah.
countries, 140,000 volunteers picking up plastic to create ocean plastic,
Yeah.
which then Adidas uses, and is this what Amex is using?
Yeah, also, yeah.
So think about that. Adidas and Amex, two of the big blue chip companies, one American, one German, and they're both making a lot of money, and they're using colossal amounts of ocean plastic. That's incredible.
Yeah, but it's not only about the material itself, it's about the whole symbol of it. Like a product made from Parley ocean plastic is a symbol of change for us. It means that this company cares.
Yeah.
They're not only making a cart, they're not only making a shoe, they're transforming their whole corporation. They signed up for a long-term Parley plan.
That's an important point, because they're not little niche parts of their business. It's the green Amex card.
Yeah.
I don't know how many millions of those are around the world, but a lot.
Yeah, and also they decided to go carbon neutral. I mean, they're like, this is like a symbol of their activities to become a leader in the field of eco-innovation. That
Yeah.
means that Amex would go and say, let's screen our whole organization, let's drag all the toxic stuff out, let's drive change drastically.
Yeah.
And when you look at Adidas, I mean, they committed to go out of virgin plastic, that means new plastic, by 2024. That's a multi-billion-dollar investment. And they only did that because they wanted to live up to that flag that they were raising with us. And that is the beginning of something. And it's not
Yeah.
about only an Adidas making change, an American Express making change, or a Corona from Anheuser-Busch InBev. It's like
Right.
these guys become champions in their category of business. Suddenly, all the other competitors in that field say, oh my God, I have to change as well.
Wait.
Because these companies suddenly
Yeah.
do what the governments can't, setting new standards.
And that's, the government almost, well, as we know, wants to not do that in this country. I love it because it reminds me of lead-free gasoline. You know, you do it, you make it work, you make it profitable, and then the consumer looks and goes, well, if I can get the lead-free one, why do I want the old one? You know, and suddenly you look at Adidas and you think, if I can get ocean plastics ones, why do I want this one? And you said right at the very beginning, it's about making it sexy, which is like making it popular.
Which makes environmentalism an innovation topic.
And that's a really critical thing. And if people take one thing away from this conversation, I'd love it to be that, which is that environmentalism is more than just people protesting in worthy ways, but in certain parts of the world in certain manners. Environmentalism can be just recycling. They just introduced recycling in Shanghai, which is fantastic. Shanghai is, 58 million people. It's as big as a country. And, it's people are doing it. A lot of the older generation don't like it because they're struggling a little bit with the rules. They're like, I don't really understand. Is it used? Is it not? Does it have to be clean? Blah, 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 blah. But it's embraced in a positive way. It's like, well, let's do this. Let's figure out how to make this work. And that's huge.
And that's the easiest thing you can do. Because in comparison to recycling would be to develop new technologies in general, new materials. And to be honest, with a lot of materials, we have no other choice. Plastic, for example, is not ready for a circular economy.
What do you think about the current trend in trying to reduce people's reliance on single-use plastics? Because from my perspective, I feel like it came up in the last handful of years as a big trend. But now, I actually, whenever I buy a cup of coffee, I don't get a lid. They don't offer me a lid unless I ask for a lid. There are no straws on the bars. And it's little things, but it's significant. And suddenly you take all these things out of the equation, and it's like, whoa. I was just on vacation.
It's an ongoing campaign. I would say every item has the potential to be a flag for the movement. That means if they don't offer you a lid, if you're opting out of a straw, if you're not using a plastic bottle, that means somebody is standing up against it. It doesn't mean that it's the permanent solution, but avoiding this toxic material is the best thing people can do right now.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, there are often no alternatives.
Well, I mean, I have to say that many of the people watching this will be in China. I'm very inspired by what I see there because of various other reasons. There's always been an avoidance of excess trash. I lived in Hong Kong for a couple of years, and my trash for the week was like this big because you just didn't get excess packaging. Here, of course, it's this size for the day if you're not careful. So I feel like in China, my experience is that it's not such a leap to embrace minimizing waste. I mean, which is very inspiring.
I mean, the waste idea is old. There is no waste.
Yeah.
And that is something we have to learn from nature. The concept of waste doesn't even exist there. Everything is a building block for new life.
Yeah.
That means if you're looking at all the items you're making, all the materials that we are pushing out, this shouldn't be waste. But on the other hand, you also don't want to produce materials in the first place that are toxic and harmful. Because even if you recycle plastic, it always leaches chemicals, it always sheds nanoparticles. It doesn't make it a better material just because you recycle materials.
Yeah, that's a very important point. I saw a comedy thing today on Instagram which said, animals don't leave waste. Please behave like an animal. So what's next for Parley? What's the future look like?
For us now, the future means scaling up what we learned. What we learned with these organizations, what we learned by diving deep into the supply chains. And on one side, it means we are spinning off ocean plastic as its own entity, because we now have a global supply chain for the best yarns, fabrics, any kind of synthetic materials.
So anyone watching this that wants plastic, ocean plastics, yeah.
So that's one side. On the other side, we are looking into future materials. That means, what is the future of material? How can we support inventors, people that grow materials? And by growing, I mean algae, yeast, mammalian, all these little micro organisms that are the building companies of this planet.
Yeah.
So what actually creates the peel of a banana, of an orange? What is the construction of a coconut? How can we learn from that? And honestly, bringing true high tech from the environment into our own lives, because we are living too long in this like ignorant idea of we are improving nature. It's not correct.
No, and you know, it's really interesting because people, if we do nothing else, we need to smash the preconception of what environmentalists and progress looks like. Because, you know, sustainability, people used to go, oh yeah, it's hemp and it's, you know, it's rock. That's nonsense. No. It's super high tech, high performance, better, more profitable, more successful. And by the way, it doesn't destroy everything.
And actually, if a material can release toxic stuff, why can't it do something that is good for my body? If it shoots chemicals into my bloodstream, why wouldn't it shoot in the right moment something that refreshes me, that gives me energy, that creates clarity? I think that nature is so advanced and we are so slow in understanding that. For me, environmentalism is futurism.
Yeah. It's true, it's true. I think that's a wonderful way to end. So Cyrill Gutsch at Parley for the Oceans, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me and all your support.
Thanks for watching. Now join us online and on social media with our experts so we can answer your questions directly and keep this conversation going.